Thanks for being with us. We have an hour for a session of Q&A with Mr. Ahmed Fouad Alkhatib. Thanks for being with us. My name is Ofer Matan. I'm head of communications for an NGO called Hand in Hand. You might have heard about it. It's probably the biggest Jewish Palestinian NGO working in Israel, Palestine. We run a chain of bilingual schools for Jews and Arabs to study together within Israel. And I'm honored to be here and help hosting this session. I want to thank the people from Haaretz and the NIF people, of course, for organizing this event. And I want to tell you just a little bit about the gentleman sitting next to me. And after that, we can do some Q&A.
Yeah.
Okay? So Mr. Ahmed Fouad Alkhatib, he leads the Realign for Palestine, an Atlantic Council project that challenges entrenched narratives in the Israel and Palestine discourse and develops a new policy framework for rejuvenated pro-Palestine advocacy. Realign for Palestine aims to cultivate a new generation of Palestinian voices committed to a two-nation solution, nonviolence, and radical pragmatism. Al-Khatib serves as the resident senior fellow with Atlantic Council's Middle East programs, where he writes extensively on Gaza's political and humanitarian affairs. He is an outspoken critic of Hamas and promotes a radically pragmatic approach to peace and Palestinian statehood as the only path forward between Palestinians and Israelis. His writing and opinions have been published and featured across the US, Israeli, and international press, and his views are prominently featured across social media platforms. Al-Khatib holds a bachelor's degree in business administration and a master's degree in intelligence and national security studies. He grew up in Gaza City and left Gaza in 2005 to attend college in the US as an exchange student. Much of Ahmed's experience is influenced by having grown in Gaza during the Oslo peace process and during the difficulties resulting from Oslo's failure and the rise of Hamas and Islamism in Gaza. Since the October 7 massacre, Al-Khatib's life has been deeply impacted by the loss of 33 of his immediate and extended family members who were killed by 3 different Israeli airstrikes. Still, he aims to play a part in breaking the cycle of dehumanization and defying the cycle of hatred, incitement, violence, and revenge. Wow, it's quite a bio. So thanks again for being with us. Before we start, some of you maybe attended a session before in the room there, and there was some serious debate there between a few Palestinian activists, including yourself. I'd love to hear your thoughts about it a little bit, and if you can give the people some context about what was the argument about, because I think it's really interesting and would love to hear about it.
Sure. Thanks so much for being here, and thank you for having me in this space, and thank you for your willingness to hear me out. And so briefly, this is not something, as you can imagine, I've been around for a while, even before October 7th. But in the space next door, I asked kind of a pointed question as far as how there is no culture. I mean, largely speaking, there isn't a culture of dissent within the pro-Palestine advocacy movement, even though the Palestinian people, just like any other community, any other nation, any other group of individuals and community, are diverse politically, are diverse just in how they think about social, political, economic issues. And I asked what some of my compatriots in the other space thought, what sort of advice they had for me to be able to break through to some of the Palestinian advocacy circles that have been very difficult for me to get into, despite the fact that I'm opposed to the government of Netanyahu, and I'm opposed to the injustices that the Palestinian people face and the military occupation and the settlements. And I call for the establishment of a Palestinian state, and I support the Palestinian people's just and urgent aspirations, despite, what you would consider a lot of the common threads in many of the activist circles. My messaging has been viewed as hostile to a lot of these activists due to three main threads, which is my deep and unrelenting opposition to Hamas on a multitude of levels, politically, ideologically, just from an ethos point of view, how they've hijacked the Palestinian National Project, how they're serving our people on a silver platter to the most far-right and fascistic government in Israel's history, and how, to me, their criminality is almost you cannot separate their criminality from the war and what the Israeli military is doing and what Netanyahu is doing, and that there is no war, there is no Netanyahu's coalition as we know it without Hamas as it exists today. That's number one. Number two is that I am very critical of the pro-Palestine movement in the diaspora in particular, and particularly the Western world as it exists. And I think for me, what is outside there, unlike what my colleagues in the other room said, I do not view the demonstration out there to be legitimate. I view it as an embarrassment. I view it as being deeply harmful, and I view it as a classic illustration of how the movement time and again fails to just to articulate what is it actually trying to achieve beyond yelling and screaming, and what is the articulable strategy in what they're doing out there beyond this being a big public therapy session. And number three is that in the spirit of not preaching to the choir and not being, because I've been in enough, just in the time that I've been doing, I've been in enough of these dialogue spaces. I've been in enough of these engagement communities where we talk, you basically get to see the same faces over and over. I have made a decision to engage audiences that are otherwise unreachable. And yes, that includes those in the center right who play an oversized role in Israeli politics. Because I actually think those people, over the long term, this is not appeasing the occupier, pleasing the oppressor. This is political organizing 101. This is the fundamentals of change theory, is you cannot write these people off and just say, oh, they're all oppressors and just khalas, you're not gonna engage them. No, you engage them. You get in the trenches. You do the dirty work. You humanize your people. You work on communicating with these people. And for some of them, I'm the first and only Palestinian they've ever engaged. And it starts in baby step. Just like I will tell you, in a lot of Gazans, 70% of Gazans have never left the Gaza Strip. A lot of them have never met an Israeli person in the flesh, even though many Gazans, thousands of them worked in Israel, etc. So this is a common theme between the two people. Anyway, so, the thing that is a challenge for me, and this is what my colleagues in the other space expressed, number one, the issue is on Hamas. This idea that I reject wholeheartedly, that Hamas is an organic expression of resistance, that Hamas, and this is a talking point that if I had a penny for every time I heard it, Hamas is there because Israel created the conditions through occupation, through oppression, through this, through that. Hamas is therefore, as horrible and horrendous as it is, something that is the result of Israeli oppression and suppression of the Palestinians. And I reject that because Hamas is not a reaction to Israeli occupation. Hamas is a nefarious plant. Hamas is basically an indirect creation of Abu Sabri, of the military governor in Gaza in the late 70s, who allowed Ahmed Yassin and who allowed a lot of the Palestinian Mujamma al-Islami, the Muslim complex and the parts of the Muslim Brotherhood to organize and to create. Their budget came out of the governor's office. And this Islamic Republic of Iran cumulatively allowed Hamas to become what it ultimately is today. Now, granted, Israel and to a certain extent the Israeli military did not anticipate Hamas to become what it is right now. And as Ehud Barak said, we created a monster and it got out of control. That's what Netanyahu did with allowing the billions of Qatari-funded suitcases of cash to be where they're at. So I am sick and tired of the narrative that simply places Hamas in this historic lens and context as the inevitable reaction to Israel's oppression and suppression, which, real as it is, accurate as it is, Hamas was much more than just that. Now, does that mean I'm excusing Israeli occupation? Absolutely not. Am I saying Israel did not oppress the Palestinians? Far from it. But everybody talks about the blockade. Well, let's talk about the blockade. And this is me again. When I speak about those things, I'm never posturing in the space of defending Israel. I am not interested in defending Israeli actions. But I believe in self-critique, assessment, looking back, learning from our mistakes, learning from what happened so that we don't keep repeating history, something that my beautiful, beloved community has failed to do that time and again. And that is not a critique of them, people in Gaza and people in the West Bank. They're living in the daily harsh realities of life under the blockade, life under Hamas, life under the settlers, life under the military occupation. So I dig that it can be hard to engage in self-critique and reflection. But that is then the role of leadership and the diaspora communities to step in and to actually play an important role in being that intellectual brain trust instead of actually worsening the situation. The blockade existed because Hamas decided to take over the Gaza Strip, to say out in the open that we're going to smuggle, and they did. We're going to fire rockets, and they did. We're going to steal. I mean, they basically took all the money from the Islamic Republic of Iran and from the Qataris later on, and they did. We're going to build tunnels, and they did. And they've turned Gaza, against the wishes of the people, into a terror base. That is a fact. That is a reality. Again, I am not defending Israel. I am simply saying that, unfortunately, that created a reality that led to the blockade. And by the way, the blockade was not because I have family members who were involved with all the international UN agencies who were part of administering some of the humanitarian aid, some of the Gaza reconstruction mechanism in 2014. The blockade ebbed and flowed in the early years of it. It was brutal. The Israeli military calculated all the number of calories you need to go into Gaza to prevent famine and really dark shit, really awful stuff. And then at a later stage, some of it was actually significantly relaxed. Did you know that, and part of them were Hamas, Gaza's first shopping malls were built during the blockade, and that was a way for Hamas to bypass the financial sanctions. They invested in muntaja'at and resorts, beach resorts and luxury resorts at a time when more of Gazans were becoming aid dependent. By the time October 7th rolled around, 70% of Gazans were dependent on aid, even though Gaza had 5 different shopping malls and all of these beachfront resorts that the majority of the population couldn't. And there were entrepreneurs, there were businessmen and women. So, sorry, brother, I'm going on for a minute. But my point is, you cannot look at the entirety of all of the aforementioned and just sit at me and tell me, well, Ahmed, I don't really like what you're doing because you're focusing on Hamas and you're forgetting that they're resistance and you're forgetting that Israel is ultimately with its oppression. I'm sorry, but that is not a very detailed or quite frankly, a sophisticated understanding of how things, actually factual things, went down that are readily available for you. So I want to deconstruct this narrative, not to defend Israel, not to run cover for them, but to help our people learn from that. Number two is this idea that, Ahmed, you're trying, and I'll stop after this. This was the other critique of the, Ahmed, you're trying to be, by not maximally using every word that you can possibly, apartheid, genocide, settler colonialism, blah, 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 which, again, I hear that over and over, by not maximally deploying this glossary of words, that, Ahmed, you're basically trying to say, oh, I'm the nice Palestinian, pick me. Oh, my oppressor, please look at me. I'm so polite. I'm so nice. I'm far from it. When the ICC declared that they had arrest warrants, I publicly said, like, I've long maintained Netanyahu's a war criminal. Like, arrest these guys. Like I have no problem saying, like, you can tell a dude like myself. I am not somebody who holds back. Okay. Like, I am not somebody who tames what I have to say so that the right wing or the nice Zionist or the Zionist pick me. What I'm trying to do, and this is where I wish people would actually think before they react to my strategy, is that you cannot write the majority of Israeli society right now, which does not read Haaretz. They are not leftists. They are not part of labor. They are not going to change their political and electoral leanings anytime soon. I'm a radical pragmatist. I need some level of change or bridge building with said communities so that at least I can convey to them, hey guys, do you know, here's why you have a fundamental misunderstanding of who Gazans are. Here's why settling Gaza is terrible. Here's why Gaza can actually develop if given the chance. Here's why this idea of they're all terrorists, they all want to kill us, they're all bad, that is a mere form of dehumanization. So that, to me, is what's so frustrating, is what feels like the basic tenets of engaging the others, engaging those who are ignorant. Did we kill every single Confederate in the World War, in the American Civil War? Did we kill every single person who was part of the apartheid regime in South Africa to end that regime? Did we eliminate every single Ba'athist in 2003? Like, you cannot eliminate people. You can engage them. There's the next battle, the next war is not Hamas's tunnels. It's not the rockets. It's not the smuggling. It is the battle of the marketplace of ideas. It is building a compelling Palestinian narrative that can win over even the most diehard of skeptics, that we as a Palestinian people, we stand for a lot more than this supposed notion that we just want to eliminate the Jewish state. We stand for the heritage of our peoplehood, of our land. We stand for nation building, and we are capable of, if given a fair opportunity, of making the most out of the space that we call Palestine. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, and that's my response to what some of my colleagues in the other room said.
Thank you for that. Okay, that was quite an energetic beginning. I like it. I just want to ask one thing before we let our audience ask some questions. You gave an interview, one of the interviews you gave to an Israeli media was around a year ago, to a magazine named Telem. You said there that it's shameful that you can count on one hand the Palestinians that are willing to criticize Hamas publicly in English. I want to ask you, are you shameful because there aren't enough people that want to do it? Or there are, but they're not willing to speak?
I said I'm ashamed. The context, the way that came up, just to clarify, like this, the interviewer, because I don't like, my goal, and this is not some fake sense of humility, but I don't like when people like just overdo the praise and Ahmed, and you're so courageous, and you're so this, you're so that, whatever, like fine. But this isn't, I'm not the courageous one. The courageous ones are the ones in Gaza that in Arabic are criticizing Hamas on social media. And I know I just showed you some examples. 24/7, and there's a disconnect between the pro-Palestine discourse abroad and what Palestinians in Gaza are thinking, even from fellow Palestinians in the West Bank, not to mention the Arabs, not to mention the diaspora in Western Europe and Canada or in the United States. And so for me, one of my raison d'etres is to actually try to convey those sentiments that, like, if you go into Gaza right now and you tell people like Hamas is an organic expression of resistance, people will beat the shit out of you. They will literally beat the crap out of you. They call them the sons of Abu Sabri. Each Shabak or each military official in the Israeli military, when they ruled, and this is when Gaza was under the direct military occupation. When they ruled, they call themselves Abu this, Abu that. Even right now, Shabak, when they have informants in Gaza, they don't obviously use their names. They go, I am Abu Muhammad, Abu Ahmed, Abu. The guy who, the way Hamas is referred to in Gaza right now is Awlad Abu Sabri, sons of Abu Sabri. That is the military governor who basically first gave the permit in the late 70s for Ahmed Yassin and the founding nucleus of what later on became Hamas. So Hamas is killing people in Gaza. Hamas is stealing. Hamas took so the IDF is throwing all these pamphlets in Gaza City right now to do an evacuation, right? What does Hamas do? They print these fake pamphlets, and they say, oh, we are the IDF, and we are telling you there's a fake humanitarian zone in the beach, and you will have water and food and tents. And then all of a sudden, the IDF is striking all these high-rise buildings along the coast, and an estimated 80 or 70 people died because of this adventure. And then people still are like, Ahmed, I don't like it when you say Hamas is holding them human hostages. Ask Gazans how Hamas is holding them human hostages. Ask Gazans what is happening right now at Nasser Hospital and Al-Aqsa Hospital in Deir al-Balah, and Khan Yunis and in Deir al-Balah. Ask all the people in there who is taking all the Qatari and the Saudi tents that are supposed to accommodate all the people fleeing. We want to save. I care about saving the maximum number of lives. To me, human life is the most sacred. It is much more important than any territory or a Palestinian state or Jerusalem or any of this stuff. And instead, Hamas is regularly discouraging people from leaving and saying, no, there's a way, we can make this work, etc. So all of that is to say, I am embarrassed and furious, and this is what was the interview was saying, and this was happening even back then, that in Arabic, on Telegram, on Facebook, where every Gazan lives on Facebook, to a certain extent on Instagram, definitely on Twitter. In Arabic, Gaza social media is full. There are people who literally, they don't even mention, don't mention Israel in passing, because everybody knows Israel's doing criminal shit in Gaza. Everybody knows what Israel is doing is horrendous, but they're like, khalas, we know Israel is this, we know the Israeli military, I should say, or the Israeli government, or elements of the military, however you want to classify it to feel better about other parts of Israel not being all involved in what's happening in Gaza. But when it comes to Hamas, there are people that exclusively talk daily about Hamas's criminality, about how Hamas is not giving up, how Hamas has been emboldened by Qatar, how Hamas is doing 1, 2, 3, 4, how Hamas is and how Abu Sabri's investment from the late 70s is finally paying off 4 decades later. And so that's abundant in Arabic. Point me, and I challenge anybody here, point me to serious accounts in English, in the diaspora, of Palestinians, not Jews or Israelis, of Palestinians or pro-Palestine accounts that are actually exposing Hamas and highlighting what Gazans are doing. And my answer to that is I genuinely believe that a significant amount of it is audience capture. I think a significant amount of it is that people don't, like Mehdi Hassan, Ryan Grimm, all of those characters and personalities online, they know that Hamas is criminal. They have staff that speak Arabic. They see this, like the Young Turks, like all these guys that I know, Jeremy Scahill, smart guys, the Drop Site News. They're smart guys that know what is going on in Gaza. But their audience of Western pro-Palestine activists, they don't want to hear that message. They'll turn on them in a dime, in a heartbeat. And unfortunately, some of the pro-Palestine movement have people who are supportive of Hamas. That is not hyperbole. I'm not saying the entirety of the movement is. Far from it. It's a diverse movement, just like any other movement. But to sit here and pretend 2 years later, when I'm in the trenches day in and day out, trying to speak to these communities, trying to induce behavioral changes, willing to sit in rooms where people are yelling and screaming at me and throwing water bottles at me, to communicate and just being like, okay, well, if they'll at least listen to me, I'll be patient, I'll take the abuse and move on. And to say that this is not a movement that has many people in it, that view Hamas as a legitimate representation of resistance. This is terrible. This is a disaster. We need this movement. I need those youth out there. The people of Gaza need those youth. The people of Palestine, we need this movement to be mobilized in all the best possible ways, because this movement has the privilege, has Western privilege, it has Western education, it has access, it has the ability to mobilize, and that is being squandered right now. So that makes me feel, when people are like, oh, you must feel so proud of being like the spearhead of being, that's the context of me saying, like, no, it actually gives me immense, like I feel embarrassed that I'm one of the few, because I know people know that, but they refuse to speak it, either because they're like, I've had people tell me when I try to speak out against Hamas, I couldn't get play dates for my kids at the playground. The halal store employees started acting weird. My in-laws blocked me on Facebook. Like, the barrier to entry at a social level, the social cost. We have fellow Jews and Israelis here. If you come out as anti-Zionist, if you come out as like Israel should be a singular state, whatever, imagine the reaction from many at your temple, at your communities, and what that's like. Similarly, unfortunately, that barrier to entry exists for many Palestinians.
Okay, so we have Achinoam there with a microphone. So you want to just start giving people a microphone. And if you can please ask a question and not just make a statement. And I think Ahmed can basically deal with any hard question, right? I think you proved it pretty well so far.
I've heard it.
All right.
So I'm really lucky in that somebody who was core to my education on many things, starting with Israel and Palestine, was not only a Palmach commander, but the general of the IDF responsible for the 1967 strategy for the invasion into the West Bank, who was a cousin of mine. And one of the things that he taught me was about the corrupting power also of money and power and narrative. So in February 24, you said that you can't love me when I criticize Hamas, but then lose your minds when I point out the serious problems with Israeli policies and politicians and positions. So there's a pressure for people like us, not you, us, the Jewish liberals here. There's a pressure on people like us to use your work to help us. That could easily become appropriative and tokenizing. And our involvement could also potentially jeopardize your work, which is really, first and foremost, I think, intended to engage Palestinians. So how do we, people who want to see you succeed, how do we help you? How do we support your work for its own sake, for your goals, and avoid those pitfalls of appropriating it for our own purposes, even well-intentioned.
Certainly. And I want to be also transparent about the fact that one of my target audiences is indeed also to engage with the Jewish community, and that's a very diverse community, or self-identifying, pro-Israel folks. And some of the for the goal of either being that first Palestinian they've ever interacted with, which it doesn't make me feel like, oh, I'm the first. It's like that should embarrass them as well, but that's a whole other story. And also for those in the peace camp or the liberal Jewish community, to provide a sense of reinforcements, like you're heard, you matter, you're not alone, like you're not ignored. And I know that some struggle with the constant rhetoric out there. The challenge is that, I can't help and this is yet another critique, added to the list that I hear all the time, is that your words get tokenized by Israelis or Jews across the spectrum who want to use you to make them feel good, or to make them feel that Hamas is really terrible and therefore they are okay with the war in Gaza, or to make them feel that, this really is about Hamas and that Israel is exempt from critique. And that's why I'm regularly, when I criticize the Israeli government, the same people who are like, oh, Ahmed, you're so courageous, give you a Nobel Peace Prize. They're like, I thought you're a real peace activist. You're an anti-Semite. Oh my God, how dare you? So like there are some people that just want to hear a Palestinian who criticizes his own community and have no interest in hearing me talk about the Israeli government. And those people I will block, I will ignore, I have no space. But I can't police people's minds or anticipate what people do, or more problematically, not speak my truth because I'm going to fear that somebody's going to potentially misappropriate my word. And this is how, if I had $1 for every time that I've spoken to Palestinians who are like, damn Hamas, damn this, I agree with you, thank God someone else is saying this, but I'm struggling to say this because of A, my community, or B, I don't want some Zionist twisting my words. I don't want some Israeli using my words as if I am somehow supportive of the war. And by the way, I have met the biggest Jewish organizations, mainstream Jewish and pro-Israel organizations in the United States. And I will sit with their leadership, and they will be in private. I swear they'll sound like some of you here, and like they'll sound like they're like a Haaretz reading, like liberal leftist Jew. God, wallah, God is my witness. They will sound just like that. And I'm like, oh, you sound incredible. So why can't you say that, some of this in public, man? Like, help a brother out. Like, come on. And they'll be like, well, the anti-Semites will twist my words, and then I will be tokenized. So it's a mutual problem for both of our communities. There are many brilliant Jews in positions of leadership who know that what's happening in Gaza is horrendous, who know that Netanyahu is in the wrong. So to answer your question pointedly, I think being humble, understanding that it's okay. You don't have to put me on this pedestal. I am but a guy that I will say stuff that you disagree with all the time. I will say things and you're like, wow, I wonder what was Ahmed thinking or drinking or smoking there. And that is totally normal. But my goal and interest is threefold. Is showing not just oh, what Hamas did on October 7th, that was bad, that was criminal, that was it's like, no, that's doing lip service. Let me actually let me tell you about the folks that helped my dad from Kibbutz Be'eri and ended up being butchered by Hamas 3 years after his death. Let me tell you about how it's antithetical to Palestinian and Muslim values, the Islam that I knew, the Palestinian values that I knew. My uncle, who was paraplegic and who worked for the Palestinian Authority. I don't come from a PA family, but my uncle did. and he worked for like the special Palestinian Paralympics, the Special Olympics, and he would bring all these like delegations from Europe. This was in the Oslo years and like right before the Intifada, and that included these beautiful European women that would come to Gaza, and even the beggars on the street, man, would know. It was an unspoken rule that like you don't even go up to these women and beg them. Khalas. Yusuf Shahada brought these women here. You let them. There was like this hospitality that you hear about, that the Arab hospitality, like the society. You know, and when my mom was I come from a very religious family, fully hijabi woman, would take us to the shawarma shop. The men would like make space for her because women's spaces were treated with immense respect and sanctity. That was all trampled on October 7th. That is not the value of Gaza. Hamas rotted the value of Palestinian society from within, in part due to the isolation, in part creating the conditions that led to the blockade, in part building a mosque at every corner instead of investing in people's minds and investing in a robust culture and investing in science and building and nation building. They invested in jihad and invested in tunnels, and we have to say that. We have to say that as Palestinians. And I don't accept what any of my Palestinian compatriots or the allies will say, that, oh, Ahmed, let's keep the focus on Israel, and because there's a genocide and there's a this. Bull crap. Bull crap. That is, what kind of a Gaza or a Palestine do we want? Anyway, just to digress for a bit, I'm just trying to say that Palestinians in Gaza and beyond are just as diverse as any other community. And so when you see things you like, wonderful, support it and engage with it. When you see things that challenge you, maybe be intrigued, do your own research. When you see things that you don't like, or you're like, oh, that's wrong, or oh, that's terrible, whatever, either be quiet, either reach out privately and be like, I wonder what that was about. I'm just curious. I'm not, or don't do what a lot of these, center right and right wingers do, which is like, oh, I thought you were my hero, but now you're just another one of these people. So humility being the key, and the willingness to treat the Palestinians as a diverse intellectual people, just like any other people, and that we're not here to just make you feel better, if that makes sense.
I got a microphone. So would you speak a little more about the Palestinian Authority, if you're willing? Who do you think it's the partner that Israel should be reaching out to instead of undermining? Who do you think should be or is a feasible next replacement for Mahmoud Abbas? And what does the Palestinian Authority need to do to change the landscape that it's in?
So I'm going to not give you easy answers, and I'm going to give you two contradictory answers. And that is the point. That is the whole idea here, because there are no easy answers. And so this is for you to stew on and think about. The ruthlessly and radically pragmatic side of me is very much so believing that to quickly turn things around in Gaza and really get things going, the PA is the closest option that we have, almost, not quite, but quasi off the shelf, that we can use some elements of their authority, namely the security infrastructure, some of the education, healthcare, and some of the financial systems. I mean, you got to keep in mind that the PA, for example, like, how do you get the Ministry of Healthcare, the Ministry of Health? They have all the list of approved medications, and those are coordinated with the Israeli Ministry of Health. And like, you have all these things. Who's going to print passports? Who's going to create and maintain the system of IDs? So you have all of these behind the scenes systems and networks and apparatuses that just without the PA, like, are just going to take a lot of time to quickly come up with. So, and finally, like, we have the USSC, the U.S. Security Coordinator, who's a 3-star Marine general, General Mike Fenzel, based in in Jerusalem, and he works with the Palestinian Authority and the Israelis and the Jordanians as well, to a certain extent the Egyptians, but especially the Jordanians, to train PA security personnel and police, so you can quickly try to create what could be a new generation of Palestinian police from the PA. So that's the convenient, like, let's khalas, yalla, we've suffered, like, let's get this going. If Israel really wants to end the war, let's get the hostages, let's, like, slowly marginalize Hamas, etc. That's the convenient option. I will tell you that I and many other Palestinians who are truly interested in how this horrendous tragedy, atrocity, devastation that has basically decimated the Gaza Strip, using that as an opportunity for a new and radically different Gaza. I've met with a lot of officials, foreign and Arab and Israelis. I've met, and I've disagreed with him fundamentally on how he framed the plan. I met with Tony Blair, and he helped me coin this term that he later used in his plan, which I really didn't appreciate. Reconstituting Gaza. Like, Gaza doesn't just need to be rebuilt. You don't just, like, put back stones and build. Like, Gaza needs to be reimagined, rejuvenated, like, so that you go beyond UNRWA and aid dependency and beyond the unhealthy reliance on Egypt's Rafah crossing and Israel's Kerem Shalom. Like, I have all these projects, for example, to try to build an internationally managed artificial peninsula using all the rubble and put an airfield on it and then a seaport, and I have this framework for a transitional period in Gaza. Everybody talks about the day after. There's not going to be this, like, clear-cut day after. And for a truly transformed and a new and a different Gaza, the PA is a disaster. The PA is corrupt. It is crony capital. I'm a capitalist, by the way, but the PA has implemented the worst forms of crony capitalism that has built a lot of the oligarch class around Abu Mazen and in Ramallah and, like, the big shopping malls and Rawabi and whatever. And I'm not against, like, fancy developments, but I'm just saying, like, I want capitalism that uplifts the people of Gaza so that we don't go back to a situation where we had 45% unemployment, general unemployment, 70% youth unemployment. The PA, unfortunately, is part of the disaster that led to Hamas's rise. I would argue much more than Israel. Hamas's rise was a response to the corruption and the incompetence of the PA, the squandering of billions of dollars of development money, even though I'm not inherently anti-PA. Like, I flew into Gaza's destroyed, short-lived airport in 1999 and in 2000 and had the Palestinian Authority passport, the Palestinian ID, like, there was hopes of a seaport, etc. Like, experienced the golden era of the PA, but it was squandered through bad political leadership, really moribund Brezhnev-like, it's kind of like the end of the Soviet Union, like that it atrophied. And then when my dear friend, Dr. Salam Fayyad, went there to try to do some work in the West Bank, he did do some good work, and they chased him out because he wasn't corrupt like them. And so Abu Mazen right now, the problem is that he and the PA, they're palace politics. They're not really, there's no real Palestinian politics in the executive committee of Fatah and the PLO. Like, give me a break. There's just, like, there's him, and there's just, like, a few yes men around him, and that's it. And they see even Hussam Zumlut, for example, who's the ambassador to the UK, who is more of an activist than an ambassador, but, like, whatever. Like, he's a young charismatic guy who I think could have a role in a future Palestine. Even he's like, they're trying to be like, no, you're rising too quick. And so I believe that there could be an opportunity in Gaza to potentially create the post-Palestinian Authority generation of Palestinian leadership and managerial class that could usher in a true state and a true nation that is actually capable of governing our people.
So related to that question is a comment you made earlier in your first panel where you said there are tens of thousands of Palestinians who would be part of nation building. That's, I think, what you said. And I found that really encouraging to hear that perspective. Can you talk more about that? So the strength of the potential within Gaza to be nation builders.
I mean, Gaza has the highest, in the Arab world, Gaza has the highest per capita concentration of PhD holders. In the Arab world, Gaza has the lowest illiteracy rate in the entire Arab world. Gaza has immense potential for becoming, there was Gaza Sky Geeks, which produced a significant number of programmers and coders and people who could, it was a test case for how Gaza is capable of being part of the future digitized AI data center economy, if you will, that is very forward looking. And so that's just an example. But prior to that, generally speaking, the Palestinian professional and managerial class in Gaza, some of which was supported by the NGO industrial complex, but nevertheless, Palestinians at an individual level have made something out of it. Some of it is that the British Council and the United States through AMIDEAST, America Middle East Language Services, have really invested a lot of time learning English and some other languages like German. My middle brother, who ran UNRWA's Shate beach camp for UNRWA, he learned German. He's about to become a German citizen. He left Gaza like 2 years before October 7th, and he's a surgeon in Germany, and he's now training to be a neurosurgeon in Germany. And he learned, like, there's a massive number of Palestinians in Gaza, professionals, who learned German, and a lot of them went to Germany. So my point is, that class in the middle, that again is not Hamas, is not Fatah, they, if given an opportunity to speak their mind freely, to actually participate in an open yet regulated and controlled and given an opportunity to progressively rise in the ranks of the rebuilding process of Gaza, within 3 to 5 years, maybe 3 to 7 years, I personally predict that if there's an actual plan and an effort to nurture a lot of those bureaucrats and technocrats and teachers and academics and journalists and linguists and coders and just like thinkers and poets and people who, you can create a very diverse pool of talent that can both rebuild Gaza, but you can slowly create this nonpartisan polity, because let's face it, unfortunately, Palestinian politics have been horrendously stunted by the Fatah-Hamas binary, particularly since the infamous 2006 elections, after which there had never been a single election then. Like, if I were dictator in Gaza, I would literally ban political parties. I would say you have to I would ban Hamas and Fatah as political parties, and I would say you have to create a new political entity with an actual program that is not, in which resistance and Israel and Palestine, like a Gaza political party that is focused on governing. How is Gaza's relations with its neighbors and the world going to be, such that Gaza can be a mini statelet of its own, basically, that is part of a Palestinian federal state, but that can exist almost as an autonomous region, if you will. And I have ideas and proposals, for example, for something called India Middle East Economic Corridor, which is a theoretical framework for Israel's regional integration as part of the Abraham Accords and having it go through Saudi Arabia, this corridor that starts in India and go. It's somewhat of a competitive framework for the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, if you will. Not a one-for-one comparison, but nevertheless, building this alliance. And so I want Gaza to be a part of that, whereby Gaza's integrated, because Gaza right now is isolated. It's our only connection other than Israel, which is not much of a connection. It's really an unhealthy codependency on Israel. Our only connection to the rest of the world has been through the horrendous Rafah border crossing with Egypt, and it goes through the Sinai Desert. And unlike, say, the West Bank's connectivity with Jordan, where a short drive and you're in Amman, you're in the urban settings and you're in the civilization. It takes us an 8 hour drive through Sinai and through ISIS infested, territories and military checkpoints in Sinai to get to mainland Egypt before then you get to Cairo or whatever. So what I'm saying is Gaza's isolated. That's part of, there's a different form of a blockade that has contributed to a lot of the social trends, if you will. So if you want to, as part of the de-radicalization of elements of the population, that number, that 70% that have never been outside of Gaza, you want to open Gaza up. You want to allow for freedom of movement through my little peninsula airfield, but also through, I love how I just called it I'm going to be dictatoring, and I'm just kidding. But through also the corridor for IMEC, through, which is going to be rail. I want to put oil pipelines to connect Gaza to Saudi Arabia and the Emirates with an oil pipeline. That way the Emiratis and the Saudis can export their oil, not gas, because the Israelis and the Eastern Mediterranean has plenty of gas. I want to get Saudi and Emirati oil through Gaza, through an oil terminal, onto Europe. That way Gaza can become an actually truly valuable node in that connectivity. And then that's how you go beyond the NGOs and then through the fiber optic connectivity with the Gulf and Saudi Arabia. That's how you get Gaza into the digital age and the data centers, etc. So there's a totally convincing and a compelling future whereby Gaza's population and this mass of the civilian population can be repurposed to actually be an asset, not a liability. But none of this happens if Hamas stays in power in Gaza. None of this happens if we keep overlooking Hamas, overlooking its criminality, calling for terrible arrangements to end the war at all costs, which I want to end the war as much as any of you want to. But just simply saying, just end the war and khalas, and I just want it out of my social media feed without any thought about what follows it, or just so that because we don't want to keep the attention on Hamas, or Ahmed, keep the attention on Israel and the genocide or whatever. That is actually horrendous. That is a recipe for the Somalia scenario for Gaza, because then you're going to have Abu Shabaab in the south. You're going to have the clans in different pockets. You're going to have remnants of Hamas. You're going to have the idea of controlling pockets. You're going to have the fragmentation of Gaza and a literal Somalia scenario. And I don't want that.
Let's take 3 questions in a row. Is that okay? And then you can answer them. Thanks.
So, in keeping with the theme of the other questions that were asked, so looking at the day after quote unquote, in Gaza and the Reformed Palestinian Authority. So, I'm sure you heard that too. There's been a lot of talk about someone like, say, Mohammed Dakhlan or one of his people taking over in the Gaza Strip. One, do you think that is realistic? And if not, is there anyone else in your opinion that's realistic and you can take over Gaza? Because I don't think it's going to happen with Abu Mazen.
Thank you. So 2 more questions.
Thank you. I'm a rabbi in Vancouver. I'm also struggling with the jet lag of the red-eye flight. Help me understand the protesters outside. Help me understand how they could ever be partners for the next phase of this here in the diaspora here in Canada. If I were to host you at my synagogue, and we've talked about it, they would come and protest that as well. Just as they've protested other people that I've had at my synagogue, from Trudeau to Polyev to New Israel Fund. Help me understand why they are protesting outside, and are they really partners? Are there partners there for peace and dialogue? Is that just raw Jew hatred masking itself as anti-Zionism?
Hi. Oh, okay. How much of a problem or an influence do you think online content creators and influencers are having on the conflict, but also on the way we engage in the conflict?
Certainly. So, number one, Dahlan. I don't see him anytime soon giving up the immense life of luxury that he has for himself in Abu Dhabi, in the UAE. He does things for the Emiratis. He's got a good setup. He's approaching, I would argue, the end of his political arc and trajectory. I would imagine the only scenario in which I imagine him stepping forward is that if there's a clear cut, if there's basically a very easy and a convenient scenario in which he can just jet in as Mr. Savior, that is the only way in which he can, in my opinion, reemerge. But we got to keep something in mind, with all due respect to Mr. Dahlan. He is exactly why Hamas took over the Gaza. He stole. Is this being recorded? Okay. Well, so he basically squandered opportunities to confront Hamas in Gaza in the lead up to the very day of my asylum interview in the United States was June 14th, 2007, which is the very day that Hamas violently took over the Gaza Strip. I was the first Palestinian from Gaza to receive asylum because of Hamas's violent takeover. And so he was tasked with fighting them off, and he wasn't even in Gaza. And he left a lot of these militias that were poorly trained. There was all this money that was squandered, and he just split. And then later on, when he had the split his fights with Abu Mazen in the West Bank, he actually started getting cozy with Hamas indirectly, just as a way to get back at Abbas, which is, I mean, talk about like ruthless pragmatism and just like the shifting geopolitics in the Middle East. And so, yeah, I think a lot of Palestinians in Gaza, on the one hand, might get to a place where they're just like desperate for anybody to come in, and he might position himself to be that. If he's forced to do it, I don't see a scenario in which he's really enthusiastically wanting to do it. On the other hand, I do know that a lot of Palestinians in Gaza are not thrilled by someone who has just, like, basically, like, no one has forgotten that maybe the younger people are ignorant, that no one has forgotten his role in Hamas taking over and getting us to this very place. As far as like the folks outside, and I'm not gonna mince my words here, and I'm gonna bulldoze right into this, and maybe some people will get offended. But unfortunately, it's because we still have people in this very conference that came up to me after in this conference, after I spoke this morning, and were deeply offended by me calling out those protesters outside, and thought it was incredibly unhelpful. And we had the session before me in which my brothers and my compatriots, the 3 Palestinian speakers on stage, all 3 of them said that, well, I don't agree with all the messages, whatever, but they have legitimate, they have legitimate points, some of these protesters, and let's not dismiss it. So that's an issue. I have said this about Rashid Khaldi and all the intellectual class within the Palestinian diaspora. I said, call out these kids early on, guys. Like, if at least you can either guide them better, you can isolate the hateful players, you can help them articulate a strategy, you can help them learn that you can't just burn it all. You cannot just, I'm old enough to remember, I mean, I'm not that old, I'm 35, I'm 65 in a 35-year-old body. Nevertheless, old enough to remember the Occupy Wall Street movement and how when the far left and basically the communists took over Occupy Wall Street and everything, and I went to their General Assembly meetings, and it destroyed it. Occupy Wall Street was effective because a bunch of white middle-class kids said, screw this, capitalism isn't working for me, let's change the system. And then a bunch of communists and quite frankly, a bunch of losers were like, screw you, this is a class warfare, blah, 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 the Communist Manifesto, and they ruined it. They ruined it. We could have had, I am of the opinion, Occupy Wall Street could have been an opportunity to prosecute some of the guys that caused the 2008 financial crisis. And it was the far left, in my humble and strongly opinioned thought, that destroyed it. Similar with the 2017 Women's March movement after Trump #1, in which the likes of Linda Sarsour in New York, because a lot of the leftist Jewish progressive folks were like, oh no, we don't want to do Islamophobia. Oh no, let's be nice to Linda, even though Linda was pushing away all the Jews and forcing them to take a litmus test. Are you Zionist? Are you not Zionist? Why bring Israel and Zionism into what could have been an umbrella massive movement that could have formed a unified front for isolating the policies of Donald Trump? Similar with the 2020 George Floyd and Black Lives Matter protests that were sabotaged by a bunch of far-left Antifa types. When Jeff Bezos donates $10 billion and everybody, the whole country comes to a standstill, and there's a real opportunity for change and adjustments, and a bunch of Antifa guys started riding in pickup trucks and technicals. They made it look like we were in Somalia. Technicals in Texas and in Austin with their stupid, AK-47s and bandanas. And they're like, we're gonna police, we're gonna provide protection for the marches and whatever. And the right wing, all they had to do was just the right wing just put that on blast, and the messaging that was hijacked. And it went from a messaging that Jeff Bezos and the mainstream could stand behind to all of a sudden a message that was this pro-violence and disgusting. And we need to destroy the patriarchy and racism and immigrant rights and Zionism and this. And it's bro, police brutality on its own. Focus on that. And no, God forbid we have a successful movement in the United States or in the West because of the obsession of all these leftists. So similarly, the pro-Palestine movement after October 7th, it became a fucking dumping ground for all of these, the far right, the far left, the Islamists, the Boko Harams, the Boko this, the Boko that, the kombucha drinkers, the Nick Fuenteses of the world. Every person who just felt I need to posture, I need to bring in my identity. And I'm sorry, I'm super pro LGBT folks to the core. But why is that? Why does that have to be such a strong statement as why do you have to create the immigrants for Palestine, blacks for Palestine, queers for Palestine, everybody, just be for Palestine, okay? Why bring identity into it? And how about why insist on making Kamala Harris, whom I'm not exactly a fan, okay, fine. I wasn't a fan of Joe Biden, but why get us to a situation where basically you let Trump win? Now, you can challenge me on the numbers and how much the Dearborn and how much the this. Like, I am willing to be challenged on how much of that. So what am I saying here? What I'm saying is, unfortunately, you have the convergence of this whole, and by the way, I'm not some right-wing nut job. I'm like a Democrat, okay? I was a lefty, okay? I was like a lefty once upon a time, but
When?
the left are nuts.
When was it?
That was like 6-7 years ago. But now I call myself a centrist right now. And I'm still a registered Democrat. My politics are irrelevant. You can be whatever you want. I'm just saying that, like, I'm saying this from a position of why, like, are social movements and social justice causes continuously being sabotaged by the very people that proclaim to care about them? And then I say this, and they're like, Ahmed, you are calling out those young kids out there? That's terrible. That is really offensive. You are what's the word that I got? 3 ladies came up to me and said, you were arrogant, okay. You were misunderstanding of these kids, okay. And then they were like, you were dehumanizing of the pro-Palestine protesters outside. And I'm like, I'm sorry. These are the same people that literally, I wish I could project it. There's a thread on Twitter, not on Twitter, on Reddit, where literally it's called Jews of Conscience. Jews of Conscience. And they are saying this thread is about how the protests outside need to focus on me. On me! Leftist Jews joining these Arab youth and saying, let's protest the moron from Gaza. Like, what has happened to the state of the discourse? So I think it is hatred of Jews that is being masked as anti-Zionism. It no longer cuts it, like at the beginning of October 7th, I could dig the like, I'm not anti-Semitic, I'm anti-Zionist. Like, that shit has ended long ago, brother, for most of these kids, okay? I'm not, by the way, I maintain intellectually, anti-Zionism is not inherently anti-Semitic. People will disagree with me, you're welcome to disagree with me, but a lot of people disagree with me, but I am personally of the belief that they are not the same. However, the line has been so thoroughly blurred and crossed so regularly. And instead of working together to delineate what is authentic anti-Zionism, which is just an opposition to what you could call a nationalist ideology, maybe it's not a nationalist ideology, versus an opposition to a people and a religious group. Instead of doing that, it's like, nope, let's just cut these kids. Rashid Khaldi, he goes on MSNBC, and he's like, let's just cut these kids some slack, okay? Let's just cut them some slack. And then the next question, he's like, but I will not forgive Israel for doing this. So, like, come on. Okay, and then the last thing I will say on that point, I know I'm giving you a heart attack, you poor thing. The last thing I will say on that is, I have recently started saying free Palestine from the Free Palestine movement, honestly. Honestly. Like, not the entirety of the movement is getting there, but I am frustrated. But I feel like we need to restart our approach. I feel like we need to redo this. I feel like we need to get back to the drawing board, to agree. And we being, I think, a lot of Palestinians, Arab and Muslim communities, and then over here, the different elements of the Jewish community, to decide on what does allyship look like, what does partnership look like. In my view, they're not the same. Partnership is joint action, mutual action. Allyship is, I'm your ally, I support your message, I support your right to protest, I disagree with you, maybe on some of the tactics or whatever, but you have a right. I will stand with your right to voice opposition or to voice 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And there's no willingness to do this, man, because it's like, no, keep the focus on Gaza. And then the people tell me that, okay, well, actually, we'll do this after the war. 30 seconds real quick to your question. I think content creators have Some of them have been really interesting and intriguing. Like, I love seeing some of the content creators from Gaza who are like creating, some of them are cooking, some of them are doing like, here's my daily routine in like the tents or whatever. Like, I don't know, just conveying like things that you and I take for granted. Like, just, I don't know, like we're humans, like we're doing things together, like we're here. There have been content creators that have been horrendous, like Hassan Piker, for example, who has gone out of his way to attack yours truly, whose fans have caused me multiple visits from the FBI and counterterrorism because of the amount of threats and the amount of danger that they have placed my life in. And so there's a spectrum, right? And in between are people who are well-meaning. They're trying their best to engage in content, but unfortunately, yes, on the pro-Palestine side, I've seen support and apologists for Hamas. On the pro-Israel side, I've seen dehumanization. I have seen mockery of Palestinian suffering. I've seen denial of the famine, of the hunger. I have seen rejection of the fact that the Israeli military is killing and shooting innocent people. And they're like, that's blood libel, Ahmed. How dare you say that? Anything that I point out about the IDF doing that's horrible is blood libel. So content creators can be really harmful as well. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ahmed. I think there was a lot of food for thought here. I'm still stuck on your in-laws not following you as a bad thing. Not quite sure what I think about that.
Blocking on social media.
Oh, blocking, okay. But thank you very much, everyone. And you can continue your conversation with Ahmed here.